The flashing lights outside his driveway made the quiet suburban morning feel unreal. Neighbors peeked through curtains as two police cruisers stopped beside the curb. Daniel Carter stood frozen on his porch, gripping his coffee mug, trying to understand why officers were walking toward his front gate. Just 3 weeks earlier, he had formally withdrawn from the Homeowners Association, tired of fines, letters, and endless rules that never seemed to apply fairly. He thought it was over. Instead, this moment would uncover a truth that would shock everyone on the street. The lead officer approached calmly, explaining that the HOA president had reported unauthorized activity and possible violations. Daniel's brow tightened. He had followed every legal step to leave the HOA. He had the paperwork. He had the proof, but as more neighbors gathered and whispers spread, tension filled the air. The HOA president arrived moments later, confident and determined, certain she would prove her authority. Daniel stepped aside and gestured toward his front door. Inside, the documents waited, and so did the truth that would change the entire block. Daniel invited the officers inside, laying a neat folder across the dining table. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating stamped letters, certified mail receipts, and the official notice confirming his withdrawal. The HOA president stood with folded arms, insisting that leaving the association did not remove obligations. Her voice carried the certainty of someone used to being obeyed. The officers listened patiently, glancing between her and Daniel, trying to understand the dispute. Daniel remained calm. He explained that he had not only withdrawn but had also purchased additional parcels surrounding his property. The president dismissed the claim with a brief laugh. Calling it irrelevant, outside, curious neighbors gathered along sidewalks, sensing something unusual was unfolding. Rumors began circulating in hushed tones. The lead officer asked if Daniel had documentation for the land purchase. Daniel nodded slowly and reached for another envelope. As he slid the deed copies forward, the room fell quiet. The officer leaned closer, studying the boundaries. What he saw made him pause, and the pause changed everything. The officer traced the property lines with his finger, then looked up in disbelief. The legal description extended beyond Daniel's home, beyond the adjacent yards, and across nearly the entire block. The HOA president's confident posture faltered. She leaned closer, scanning the document, her expression shifting from certainty to confusion. Daniel said nothing. He simply allowed the papers to speak for him. Months earlier, he had quietly purchased foreclosed lots through a legal auction. The parcels had been scattered across the neighborhood, overlooked and undervalued. Together, they formed a continuous stretch of land surrounding multiple homes, including several belonging to HOA board members. Outside, the gathering crowd grew thicker. Neighbors whispered, trying to piece together what was happening. The officer cleared his throat and asked one final confirming question. Daniel slid forward the county recorder's certification. Silence filled the room. The authority the HOA believed it held was suddenly uncertain, and the implications were only beginning to unfold. The HOA president stepped back, visibly shaken, insisting there must be a mistake. She demanded the officers verify the information immediately. The lead officer stepped outside to make a call, leaving the room heavy with tension. Daniel stood quietly near the window, watching neighbors cluster along the sidewalks. Some looked worried. Others looked hopeful. Years of disputes, fines, and selective enforcement had left deep frustrations throughout the neighborhood. The president paced the living room, her earlier confidence replaced by anxious energy. She spoke rapidly about community rules, shared standards, and neighborhood integrity. Daniel listened respectfully but did not interrupt. He understood the value of community. What he rejected was control without fairness. When the officer returned, his expression was professional but unmistakably serious. County records confirmed the deed boundaries. The authority the HOA believed it held did not apply to Daniel's land holdings, and if those boundaries stood uncontested, the balance of power in the neighborhood had just shifted overnight. Word spread quickly along the block. Neighbors exchanged stunned looks as the officer explained the situation outside. Some homeowners realized their lots bordered parcels now owned by Daniel. Others began asking quiet questions about HOA authority and jurisdiction. The president attempted to regain control, arguing that community covenants still governed the neighborhood. But uncertainty had replaced certainty. For the first time, residents questioned whether the rules they feared were truly enforceable. Daniel stepped onto the porch, calm and composed. He assured everyone he had no desire to disrupt the neighborhood. His goal had never been control, only fairness and freedom from selective enforcement. The tension eased slightly, replaced by cautious curiosity. The officer concluded there was no legal basis for enforcement or police action. The cruisers prepared to leave, but as engines started and neighbors slowly dispersed, one question lingered in the air: what would happen next, now that the power structure everyone accepted had quietly changed? In the days that followed, the atmosphere of the block transformed. Conversations replaced complaints. Neighbors who rarely spoke began gathering at driveways and mailboxes, discussing possibilities for a more cooperative future. Daniel received knocks on his door, not demands, but invitations to talk. Some residents shared stories of fines they never understood. Others expressed relief that someone had finally challenged the system. The HOA president remained distant, consulting legal advisors and reviewing documents, searching for options. Yet the facts remained unchanged. Authority depended on jurisdiction, and jurisdiction depended on land ownership. Daniel made one thing clear: he had no intention of dismantling the neighborhood's harmony. He simply believed respect should replace fear. Gradually, the tension that once defined the block softened into cautious optimism. Still, one final meeting was scheduled, a gathering that would determine whether the neighborhood's future would be shaped by conflict or cooperation. Residents filled the community park that Saturday morning, unsure what to expect. The HOA president arrived with revised proposals. Daniel arrived with a simple message: the neighborhood deserved fairness, transparency, and mutual respect. The discussion lasted hours, but the tone remained calm. Rules were reviewed. Policies were clarified. Enforcement procedures were rewritten to ensure consistency and accountability. By afternoon, a new agreement emerged, one built not on fear of penalties, but on shared responsibility and neighborly trust. Even the former president acknowledged that the confrontation had revealed flaws that needed correction. As the meeting ended, sunlight stretched across the quiet street. Children rode bikes. Neighbors waved. The tension that once defined the block had dissolved into something steadier and stronger. What began with flashing lights and accusations had uncovered a truth no one expected: that fairness can reshape a community, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.